The Bristol Flyers Podcast is proudly sponsored by UE Bristol, who have recently teamed up with Amazon to create Alexa's first university prospectus. So if you're considering your university options, you can just ask Alexa to open UWE Guide to discover what they offer, all tailored to suit your individual needs and interests.
This is the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
Hello and welcome back to the Bristol Flyers Podcast, sponsored by UWE Bristol, with me, your host, Joel Osborne. We're back a little bit later than planned. Schedule's been nuts recently, but this week we're very pleased to be joined by Josh Rogers. Just a bit of housekeeping before we start the podcast. Make sure you let us know your thoughts on the pod and let us know who you want to see on future episodes. Tweet us at Bristol Flyers. And if you're listening on iTunes, please give us a rating and a review, and do subscribe so you get future episodes straight to your phone as soon as they're released. But without further ado, let's get to episode 7 with Josh Rogers.
You're listening to the Bristol Flyers Podcast.
All right, time to welcome in our guest for this week's episode of the Bristol Flyers Podcast, and it's Josh Rogers. Josh, welcome to the pod.
Good morning, mate. How are you?
I'm not too bad. It's been a strange old year, isn't it, with like everything going on. What's it been like from your point of view, just playing in terms of just playing in the pandemic right now?
It's become normal now, to be honest. But it's been. I think mainly we're very sort of lucky to be playing. I mean, most basketball, most sport is cancelled right now. So the very fact we're allowed to play is great. It makes this lockdown very different from the first one where we all just sat in our houses. So it's just been the most hectic season I've ever played. Really, it's a lot of like games, a lot of weeks where we got like 3 games in a week and stuff. So. Yeah, you just kind of like, you got to do what you got to do. I think it's about kind of just adapting at the moment, isn't it? And being just being grateful that we can even do it, to be honest. So like 3 games in a week is better than no games in a week. Yeah.
Have you ever been part of like a team that's had a schedule this busy before?
No, not even close. I mean, a regular season's like 1 game a week, and we have the occasional doubleheader Saturday, Sunday. But this season it's like, it's rare to have a weekend without 2 games at the moment. So, never been a part of any schedule like this.
Yeah, they've like stacked them all at the back end of the season because there's been so much disruption at the start. I mean, you guys all went down with COVID in the first 2 weeks of the season, and then you've had a Christmas break as well, which not many other teams have had, and then the international window came. And then another like isolation period for some of the GB guys. So like you almost get momentum, and then it's like, oh, it's stopped now. I got to self-isolate, or we can't play for like another 2 weeks now. But that's really frustrating.
Yeah, it has been difficult to get momentum, and it's like it's once we got those 2 wins back to back, it was like we were looking to push on, and then there was like another big break. So it's kind of quite stop-start, and obviously. You're aware that like all those games that are postponed are going to be coming back at some point later in the season. So we've got a hectic few weeks ahead of us. But like I say, it's just like, I think everyone's kind of just understands that this year's just always was going to be crazy. Like however that ended up being, it's just like you can't be kind of like upset that something's a bit out of the normal, because there is no normal.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. So,
what would you say has been the biggest challenge for you in this whole pandemic season so far?
I think just not basketball wise has been pretty much the same, because we go to practice and you play a game, but I think it's more just the off the court stuff is probably the most challenging, just in terms of the same stuff that everyone's going through in terms of being able to stay motivated and kind of stay connected to people. I think. Because it can, obviously we're in a lockdown, so it's very much like you go to practice and then you go home, you go to practice and you go home. And so it's, basketball-wise, I don't think it's been, other than the schedule and the sheer amount of games, I wouldn't say it's been any more challenging than a normal season. But it's just about everyone being able to stay kind of like positive, stay motivated, and not just kind of start feeling like, ugh, you know what I mean? So
yeah, I think that's the key, because like I don't know if you've seen, but Flyers have recently signed that partnership with Paranemo, who do like they're a mental health and well-being company, and people can book in and book appointments and things. And I think that's been like a massive part of the whole lockdown thing. It's just mental health and just people, because it's so tough, isn't it? Like literally you can't do anything outside of your job. And for you guys, I guess you guys are lucky to be playing basketball.
Yeah. No, I think it's really brought all that stuff into the forefront. And I think also just people starting to realize how important kind of social interaction is. I always kind of viewed myself as a bit of a hermit. Like I'm okay just kind of like being on my own. I quite enjoy being alone, but like I didn't realize quite how valuable being around friends and family it was to kind of how I was feeling. And I think everyone's kind of realized the value of like of friends, family, and community. Things like the Flyers, things like being able to be around other people and share something, because there's a limit to like what you can do over Zoom or a one-to-one walk in the park is kind of like it's not the same. So yeah, I think everyone's just, it's a tough time for everyone in that regard, isn't it? And just kind of, but hopefully the end's in sight now. So
yeah, fingers crossed.
Just gotta tough it out.
Yeah, I know you recently wrote a blog on the Bristol Flyers website. Hopefully, fingers crossed, it's the start of a series of blogs.
Yeah, more to come. Man.
But you spoke about like the having no fans at the Wise campus. It's been a year since we last had fans now at the Wise campus. It's gone so quickly, hasn't it?
Yeah. It's been really weird. There's no other way to describe it. It's a very strange. It feels games almost feel a bit like practice in a way. Like it doesn't have that same oomph.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been strange. But to think it's been a year since that happened. It was this time. Was it about this time last year that we were playing against Glasgow right before the season got called off?
Yeah.
And to think that was a year ago and how different everything was. There was this like unknown kind of like thing happening. No one knew what was going on. And there was like a weird kind of air in that game where everyone kind of knew it was the last game. So it was like sort of knew it was not going to matter. Or do you know what I mean? It was weird. And
everything had shut down, hadn't it? Like the football had shut down, rugby had shut down. And then I remember them saying that the game was going to go ahead, the Glasgow game. And I was a bit like, oh, wait a minute, like, should this not be postponed at least? Like, because literally we were one of the last sports that were playing. But then that turned out to be, you think you could end the season in July, August, whatever, but then the season ends up getting made null and void, and then the whole lockdown thing happens, and here we are a year later, and still, lucky to be playing basketball again, but it's been so tough.
Yeah, and I think it's God knows what you lot behind the scenes have been having to like scramble. For us, it was very much like it ended, then we went home to lockdown and sort of sat out and waited. But I know like you guys and like Andreas and everyone in the club was just scrambling to figure out what, and even in the BBL, like figure out what's going on. So for us, it was very much just like, right, sit at home, eat food, get bored and wait. And then now we've just been, luckily enough, like people have been able to scrape together, the deals to make us be able to play the season behind closed doors and all these things. So yeah,
there's only so many videos of Nick Burns cooking at home that you can watch during lockdown.
Yeah. I was over it, man. I was over it after the first one.
So like the whole like aim of this podcast, I don't know if have you heard any of the episodes so far?
Snippets
of episodes. So the whole theme of this episode is inspiring the next generation of Bristol basketball. And I know, yourself is the perfect case study. You're born in Bristol, you came through the SGS pathway and came up and played for the first team. You got that scholarship overseas, you played professionally, and then you came back to Bristol as well. I think it's, a perfect case study almost of where you can go if you're looking to play basketball in Bristol. And it's one of the only cities, isn't it, where it's really got that pathway from the junior level, under 10s at the basketball centre, all the way through up into a BBL program to accompany that as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's a handful of cities where you could do that. Really, I think here, Newcastle, London. I'm sure there's a few others, but like in terms of having the clear pathway where if a kid starts playing at 10, they can see the route for them all the way up to America or to professional. Yeah, it's rare in this country, definitely.
Yeah, and I don't think people. I mean, you've obviously come back and you've played here as well, but I don't think people also realise that you've got like you also have a full-time job with the Bristol Sport Foundation as well. And have you seen firsthand from working with the foundation, like some of the next kids coming up and getting into basketball at a young age, and if so, like how pleasing is that for you to see?
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it's kind of, so most of my work is going into primary schools, coaching, representing Bristol Sport and the Flyers, coaching kind of like so the kids will probably be from like ages of like 6 to 11 or whatever. And yeah, I mean, so Nassim, who's SGS Academy, plays on the team now. He started playing because Roy Owen went into his primary school. Roy Owen used to play for Flyers. And so Nassim's come all the way up through the same pathway I did, and is now looking to get to America and go and play college basketball. And that all started from Roy going into his school. So it's like every time we go into these schools, and you're introducing this game of basketball to a kid, you just never know where that might end up taking, and there's so many pathways it can take. So it's great to just be able to be a part of that, and also to kind of have the link with the Flyers where, you know, you could introduce basketball to a young person, and then they might come and watch the Flyers and see all the kind of high flying action and be like, wow, that could be me one day, and then start off on that pathway, you know. And like I say, there's just no telling where it can take you. So that's been really exciting, yeah, to be involved in the kind of grassroots level of it, for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting you're talking about that, because I imagine you were in that same boat looking at players like Greg Street and Tyra Treasure and thinking, wait a minute, you know, if I keep playing and working hard and going through that journey, the player pathway, that I could be doing the same as well. And here you are now. That must be quite a surreal feeling for you.
Yeah, it's because I guess I was playing for Flyers when I was kind of like, I must have been 10, 11, something like that. And obviously back then the men's team was just like this like unattainable kind of like, wow, like look at these guys. So to think, that I'm playing for the men's team is pretty nuts. And it's just like to be honest, it just feels good to be a part of that kind of like, and what would you call it? Like a kind of like a chain. Like there was like, you know, there's Greg and stuff first. Now I can do it. And then the teams come up through the pathway, and there'll be someone starting now, or someone in the Flyers juniors teams now who's coming up, and they're going to be doing that. And then they'll inspire the next sort of young kid after them. So just to be like just involved in that kind of like system is it's mad. Like, and I think maybe it won't fully kind of settle in until I've maybe been removed from it for a few years and look back and like, wow, that was pretty special to be a part of it, you know. But while I've got the chance to be in this position, it's not going to last forever, you know. Like you have a limited kind of like lifespan as a player. So just kind of making the most of it, enjoying it for myself, like really trying to take it in, especially when the fans are back and stuff, and just trying to enjoy every moment while I've got it, and then doing what I can to make sure that, you know, it carries on after me, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's crazy as well, because like the basketball community as it is quite small anyway. Like someone, like you've grown up playing with someone who knows someone else, but then the basketball community in Bristol is even smaller. So you do see those case studies, like, you know, you know them firsthand, and imagine having that involvement at a really close level must be really, really rewarding for you. Just like, let's run it all the way back and talk like how you first got involved in playing basketball. How old were you when you first started?
I first started when I was like 5 or 6, just playing like in my room in my house. My brother played. He's quite a bit older than me, so he's like 11 years older than me. So he was like a sort of teenager playing, and obviously I was like a 5-year-old, and if you've got like a teenage brother, it's like a god, you know. So I just played because he did. I just kind of copied him. I didn't really like it that much for like the first few years. I played football and cricket and tennis, and I really liked them. And basketball, I kind of like, it was all right. But I just kind of played because like he did. And then at a certain point, it just kind of started to click. I started to really love it and take it more seriously, and then it kind of built from there, really. So just trying to impress my brother at first.
Yeah, everyone seems to be competing with their brother, don't they?
Yeah.
That's usually like how a lot of players like get involved in a certain sport. Oh, my brother played it, so I'm going to go play it now as well.
Yeah, there's a big moment when I first beat him 1-on-1 as well. I think he found it tough to take.
Did you both go and play at the basketball centre together for Flyers? Is that like?
No, he was before Flyers even existed, really. So I would go down to like the park to play with his mates. So he would go. There was like a small kind of like, this was in the street ball days, like, you know, and one and stuff. So there was like a small like almost street ball kind of like community. So, you know, like Brandon Hill, he would take me down to Brandon Hill, and there'd be all these like cool like teenagers or whatever, however they were at that point. And I would watch, and they'd play like 4 or 5 games, and they'd let me play one where they'd like just kind of take it easy or whatever, and then I'd go on and shoot while they were resting in between games. But Brandon Hill was like, you know, it's like at the top of a hill, so when the ball would go off, you know, it rolls down the hill. It's like the worst court. It's like one hoop, no net. So yeah, it was just that, really, just going down, watching, kind of like playing when I could, and then it took a few years before I joined like playing sort of, you know, organised basketball, like indoors and stuff. Yeah.
What was it that made you decide you wanted like to look for a club and be like, oh, wait a minute, I really enjoy playing basketball at this age. How do I get involved and play at a higher level? Were you approached by anyone from Flyers, or were you told to go to the Saturday morning sessions? Or
no, there was like a BBC Sport, like, you know, like BBC Sport had a website, and it had like a like local club finder like thing on it, and I just clicked on it and I found it was at City Academy. But this was called it was called Bristol Bombers back then, and then after the 7/7 bombings, they changed the name just because it felt insensitive to Bristol Academy, and so that was Bristol Academy for a while, and Filton Flyers was a separate thing. That was before they kind of joined, but yeah, it was just from app, it was before apps actually, just from a website, and yeah, just kind of went down to the sessions there and kind of played for them until it joined with Flyers, and then kind of moved on to Flyers. So that was like 15 years ago. 40, it's a long time ago. Share my age.
Yeah. Well, so talk us through what happens next. You play the what was the basketball centre sessions back then, and then you got in. Obviously, the Flyers and the Bombers, they merged together. Bristol Academy, and made Bristol Academy Flyers. And then you went on to play for them in Junior National League, which I imagine would have been your first experience of competitive basketball at junior level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So played under 14s National League, and yeah, I can't really remember that much about that. It's just a long time ago.
Yeah.
It just kind of like, that was when I really kind of like fell in love with it. Because I've been playing up an age group for most of the time. I've been playing with under 16s, because there wasn't an under 14s team, and then they made an under 14s team. So all of a sudden I went from being like really small and not very good to playing with people my age, and I was like, oh wow, this is fun. I was good, and it was like, it started enjoying it. That's kind of the moment where I got the real bug. Before then I was kind of just playing a little, just playing around. But yeah, and then just from there it was just kind of like every sort of step up, went 14s, 16s, 18s, and yeah, kept going like that.
Were you always quite tall in terms of your age group when you were coming through? Was that always a help, or did you have that kind of growth spurt midway through your junior your time playing junior Flyers?
Yeah, I grew late, so I was kind of like, I was tallish, but I wasn't especially tall. I was quite a late developer, which helped me because I would play guard. I played point guard quite a bit actually in kind of like under 14s, under 16s. And I think actually in English basketball, when a kid's really tall early on, they just get put in the post, and that can actually, I saw a lot of kids who were really good like at that age, that happened to them. They got put in the post, and then as we got over to adult level, they didn't have to develop that skill set because they were just bigger than everyone. They would just pass the ball inside, and that's hampered them a lot. So I think I was lucky that I wasn't so big that I could just play in the post, so I could play a guard. And also the coaches back then, who actually, Andreas was one of them, were really always from the young age like making me play as a guard, and so that really helped me, because I think a lot of coaches, if they were more kind of focused on just winning with the team they've got, they go like, right, you go in the post, that's going to help us. But I think they were much more focused on what's going to help me in the long term, which was me playing as a guard and developing those skills. So yeah, I'm very thankful that happened, because I think in a different situation I could have ended up in the post, and that would have definitely hampered my kind of development.
Yeah, it's one of those ones, isn't it, where like if you're quite a big, I mean, I was always quite a small player at junior level, so I was always naturally put into like the point guard. You'll be the point guard because you're the smallest player on the team. But for the opposite way, you know, if you're a tall player at a younger age, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be a tall player when you're older. You know, so I guess that is super important for like players, if you know, for junior players, if they're listening to this episode of the podcast, to work on your handles, because you know you may be a tall player now, but there's nothing saying you're going to be a tall player, you know, in 5-10 years time when you're looking to make that next step up to play at senior level.
Definitely, and the difference is, you know, it's crazy, because we had players back then when we were 14 who were like 6'2", and they were just huge, like bigger than everyone. But they're 6'2" now, you know, like at that sort of age, kids develop at such different levels that just because a kid is massive there, they might not even end up being, you know, if you're 6'2" in the BBL, you're a guard. So yeah, for young players, like just always work on your skills. Never rely on any physical gift, even if it's something like athleticism. You know, if you're just stronger than everyone, you might not always be stronger than everyone, because people are going to catch up. So I would say to any young player, don't rely on any physical gift too much. You've got to develop the skill set, because you never know how that's going to balance out, you know, and it can work with anything. Speed, you know, if some players are just quicker than everyone, that can end up not working on those skills. So yeah, definitely I would say that.
No, I think that's some really good advice. Talk us through, so you finished playing under 16s level, obviously then you make a decision to go to SGS College as well, and was it called Filton College back then? Yeah, so you go to what was SGS College, and obviously for those that aren't too familiar with the setup at SGS College, you play like, was it 16 hours of basketball a week timetabled into your post-16 studies? What were you studying at SGS?
So I studied A-levels. I did chemistry, biology, and maths, which is a huge mistake, because I was awful at them all. But the basketball side of things was amazing, was really good. It was like, it's the only place where you can get like strength program, like training like 2-3 times a day, access to really good coaches, really good, like the best facilities in the Southwest. So yeah, it was like it's kind of like what you would get at like an American high school almost, which is really rare for this country. There's only like a handful of places that will do it. So yeah, that was really great experience for that. Yeah,
you essentially get the training you would do, but you also play Wednesday afternoons for what is now EABL, and then you have the weekends, which is essentially Junior National League. So you're almost playing in 2 competitive competitions. So you essentially have 2 competitive games a week, sometimes more if you have a double header.
And you get the chance to train with the men's team.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's the biggest part of it, is that there is the feeder through. So the best players who play at the academy, and we've seen it year after year, we've seen the players of like yourself, like D'Lo, like Tamas, Dean Williams, and we're seeing it now with players like Marvin and the rest of the academy players that are part of the first team. But if you are good enough at that level, you do get to train with the BBL team. And I guess that is another huge step for your development, because, as an 18-year-old playing with a professional team on a week-by-week basis, that must be amazing for player development.
Yeah, it's the best thing you could do, especially if you're looking to go to the next level or go to America or something like that, because however good a level you're playing at under 18s, you just can't match that kind of physicality of like fully grown players. So, I mean, I was just getting thrown about. It was Davis Bound and Doug Williams were the imports then, and obviously Greg was on the team, and Ty Treasure, and Enrique Garcia, and I was like a rake. So just going in there and just getting like beaten up every single practice, it's like it was just Oh man, it was hard. It was really hard. But like that's what prepares you to the next level. Because then when I went to college, it's like you're playing against full-grown men. So, I think for a young player at that sort of age, like to start playing with adult basketball as early as possible is great, just because of that physicality.
Yeah, and you're like 17 at this point, right? Or 16, 17 years old, and then playing in NBL Division 1 alongside these, these import players and everything. Do you remember like your first game for Flyers in NBL Division 1?
Yeah, it was the USA Select game at Wise, and had like 8 points, I think. So I thought I was like, yeah, this is easy. And obviously that was my highest point total I had for like the whole season. But like for some reason I just had beginner's luck in that game, and it was a So that game was like, and that was the first time I played in front of a legitimate crowd. You know, and under 18s there was a lot of like, you'd have like just parents, or like there'd be like 10 people in the gym or whatever. That was the first time I played in front of an actual stand of people. And that was just like a rush, like I'd never really had before. Couldn't sleep after it, and I was like, yeah,
Was that the year they just put in the red bleachers into the sports or SGS?
I think it was. Yeah.
So I don't know if anyone's seen any photos of the bleachers before they put the red ones. Yeah,
like three rows.
That's right. It looks really funny. But I think we did something on social media about it. It was like how it started and how it's going.
Yeah.
And it was like a photo from like, because that was, because I was part of the academy as well, and that was when I was there. When my last year was the last year they had those bleachers in.
Right.
And we used to always sit and watch the Div 1 games after we like finished training and stuff, and just like.
And there'd be like 20, 30 people.
Yeah. And like now to have 750 odd people at SGS week in, week out, it's mad to see like how much that has grown in such, like 5, 6, 7 years.
Yeah. When you put it like that, it's it's just crazy. And there's, like I say, there's a lot of people around the club who were there at the start, which is really good. It's not like it's totally changed, hands or whatever. So I think that's why a lot of people have such an attachment to the club, because people you were around back then, Andreas was around, Nick was there, so all these people, Chris Bourne, our assistant coach, so like, yeah, for all these people to still be around the club, so everyone knows like it wasn't always like this. This took a long time for people to build up. Volunteers, loads of volunteers that were there back then. That's why I think people are so kind of like, how the club has got such a kind of place in their heart, because it's like it's not like you're just walking into this ready-made thing that was always like this. It took like work for people to get it to this point.
Yeah, and fingers crossed that momentum can just keep going through now as we go on this next journey of moving towards Ashton Gate and the rebuild here down at the stadium. Yeah,
it's just incredibly exciting that could happen, and I think it's what's great about it is that it has this. It's not like you're just building a stadium and hoping to randomly fill it. It's got this really solid community and core of fans already, because like you say, like what was it, 700-800?
Yeah, it's like 7. It's like, well, technically it's 500 on the seats, 100 around the court side, and then we get around 100, so 500, 600, 100, 150 around the court side, and then 100 on the balcony. So we like 750 is usually a complete sellout for us. Right,
but it sells out super quick, doesn't it? Like it's so there's already this like there's already a lot of people that want to come to the games, and it keeps selling out. So it's like when to be able to bring that kind of like community over to this new stadium, and then with the visibility to attract new people in, who are just like, I know since joining Bristol Sport, I've chatted to a lot of like fans at the games who would be like, oh yeah, I was a City fan and I just sort of heard about this, so I popped along and now I'm hooked, kind of thing. So just the visibility, I think once people come to their first basketball game, that can be enough to kind of just hook you to be like a lifelong fan. Like especially if you get to like a close game, it's like a nail biter and it's like one shot in it, or there's a couple of dunks. Like any game that involves Marcus, basically you'll come and you'll be like, and especially at Wise because you're so close to it all. It's not like you're at the back of like a massive like thing. Like So I think if one game is enough to hook people, so that visibility, I think it's just going to take Flyers to the next level, really.
Yeah, that's the one thing I really hope that when the new venue at Ashton Gate comes online is that they can create that same kind of atmosphere and that proximity, because that is essentially what made me fall in love with the game as well. Like, just the whole being close to the action. Like, there's nothing like a sold out. We speak about there's nothing like the atmosphere at Wise, and you look at the other like BBL venues. Some clubs you're really far away from the court. Some clubs you're, the seats are miles away, and for Flyers, you're literally the courtside seats are there, and players talk to fans. Like, do you get that a lot? Like, do you sometimes hear some of the fans talking? Especially the academy kids on the baseline, right?
Those little seats, the academy kids that sit on the seats are hilarious. They always get into the head of someone. Yeah, you can hear. I mean, you can hear basically everything. I think you try and kind of like get into a sort of zone where you're blocking it out for them. Certainly away fans. But the energy is crazy. And the thing with basketball is because it's so like momentum based that it's not, with other sports, you can go and there can not really much happen for a long period of time and then there'll be a goal or whatever it is. With basketball, because it's so like momentum based, there's always a shift in like the energy in the room. So it's like we hit one shot and it's like, okay, and then we hit 2 and 3 and then all of a sudden it's like fever pitch, and it's like, so it's a bit of a roller coaster, I think people like that. And it's also great for families, it's also great that like it's a place where you would be able to take a young child and the atmosphere is like, not to badmouth like football or anything, but like there's certain kind of like, if I was taking like my niece or something to a football game, I'd be a little bit.
You'd be careful about what part of the stadium you're sitting in, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
I definitely
You don't get that at Flyers.
No, like if you take a young child to Flyers, there's none of that like sort of same level of like aggression, which is great, but it offers a different thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of like taking it back to like your time with the academy. So you enter your last year at the SGS Basketball Academy. What happens next? Were you always set on trying to get a scholarship at the States?
Yeah, like by any means. I kind of had no plan B, which isn't something I'd advise to anyone. But I was just so set on it. It was like I couldn't imagine a life without doing that. It was just from the age of probably, 14, it was like a goal, but I didn't really know it was possible. And then about 16, it started to be like, this could actually happen. And then from that point, it was just like, had to do it, whatever happened. So yeah.
What does that process entail? Like, how do you make those contacts? And did Andreas and like Chris, was Chris Bourne there a coach
Chris
at the time?
Bourne was my teammate at the time.
So that was how long ago it was. So was it Guy Coles, I imagine?
Guy Coles, yeah. Guy Coles and Andreas were my main coaches. It was so sent about 300 emails just to every school I could possibly imagine. Got about like 4 responses, one of which was interested out of 300. And then Guy and Andreas recommended me a kind of recruitment service where you like pay a little bit and then they have the contacts for you. I remember we had like a pool session. So we went to like Hawfield swimming pool with the academy one day. And at this point I was getting a bit kind of like, oh God, is this actually going to happen? Like starting to really doubt, like being like, oh, I've emailed all these people, there's no responses, there must be a reason, I must just be not good enough. And we went to this swimming pool session, and then when I got out and checked my phone, I had like 12 offers, just like it's 12 emails from schools in my email address in my inbox. I was like, oh. And like, so that was just like the like single best day of my life. So that paid off, and that was Guy and Andreas that kind of recommended that kind of service to me.
Yeah.
And from there, it was just a case of kind of talking to various coaches, and then the first coach to offer me a scholarship was, I just took it right away. So a lot of this advice I wouldn't actually give to like young players. I was lucky that this all paid off for me, but in terms of like, I had no plan B, and the first offer I had, I was just like, yeah, take it, sign it, which again worked out well. Probably in hindsight should have considered a few more, but it was just like, I was so, if someone's offering to pay for the dream you want to do,
Yeah.
I was just like, yeah, let's do it. Signed like soon, first day of signing, I signed, and then, yeah.
What schools were you talking to?
I can't remember the names of them now, but they were all around the kind of like, they were all Division 2 schools. I wasn't talking to any Division 1 schools, and a few like NAIA and stuff. But yeah, I can't remember any of the names because I didn't really talk to them for that long. I just signed with Carson-Newman straight away, really.
Yeah, lots of players are always like, I must sign for a Division 1 school and nothing else would be good.
Yeah.
But like having to sign for like a Div 2 school, like you do see like success stories coming out of players that play at like Div 2 and Div 3. And if you're being offered a lot more minutes and a lot bigger role in a club, then like it's definitely like the route to take. Like,
yeah,
like
100%.
It's not just Div 1 or bust.
100%, and I think for young players trying to get to that kind of that level, I think it's about like really being honest with what you or really considering what it is you want out of basketball. You know, because if you go Division 2 and you get a degree with no debt, you get a free degree paid for. So it's like, yeah, Division 1 is great, but what can you get out of basketball? What can basketball provide for you other than just playing the game? Like, it's not just about getting at a higher level basketball as you can. It's also about getting an education that can set you up after basketball. And the kind of other thing is that Division 1, Division 2 thing is not as simple as like all the Division 1 schools are the best, then the Division 2, then the Division 3. There's a lot of Division 3 schools that are better than Division 2, and a lot of Division 2 schools that are better than like the bottom half of Division 1. But the divisions is kind of based upon like loads of factors, like the size of the school, the size of the arena, like your budget, things like that. So it's not just this case of like, that's, you know, it's not like divisions in kind of like football where it's like the Premier League is the best, then Division 1. You know, there's kind of a bit of crossover. So it's just about finding what situation actually works for you and just getting this idea of like, I've got to go here, I've got to go there. NIAA, for instance, like, I wasn't really considering it at that time because I was like, I want to go NCAA because that's this thing. But there's great NAIA schools. I could have had a great education at NAIA school, you know? So it's just, I think just really learning about these preconceptions and where they're actually rooted in fact and where they're not, you know?
I think the weird thing also is that you don't have to go to America to make it big. Like Greg Street didn't even go to the States. Like and he's, you know, one of the Flyers' greatest ever players from Bristol, and didn't even go and get a scholarship overseas. He just, you know, played for his hometown club.
Yeah, again, it just goes back to that, like, what do you want to get out of basketball? If you want to go to America and that's your dream, that's great. But there's amazing unis in England. You can get great scholarships there. You can play professionally in the BBA. You can put like a long career together like Greg. It's just about, you don't have to all go, there's not this one route you have to go down, you know, there's so many options for young players. Like there's, you can stay in England, you can go to Europe, you can go that route. There's just anything you want, really.
Yeah. So you arrive at Carson-Newman, 110 appearances, 10 points, 7 rebounds a game throughout your whole college career. I did a quick Google before we did the podcast.
110 games.
Yeah.
Wow.
How do you look back on that whole experience?
Oh yeah, amazing. Like it's kind of made me who I am, really. I think I went there as just like this like giddy like kid. I was just like, America. I remember I got to the airport and was just like ran around to find like a fast food place because I was just like, this dream America. I got the Fanta was just like so orange. I was like, oh my god, the Fanta is just like bright orange. Like went to like, first got like Mountain Dew, which I'd never had before. I was like, what is this? Like, it's green. And I was just like totally like a kid in a candy shop kind of thing. And then 4 years there from the age of 18 to 22. It's kind of and to be kind of like out of away from home and kind of out of like completely out of anything I knew, you know, so not around my same group of friends, same like ideas or whatever, just to be in those kind of quite formative years where you're going from like basically a child to like an adult, and not be around anything I knew I'd known was very like really important to just basically figure out like what is it that I kind of like think or believe, you know, what's, you know, seeing how different people were there and here. And like, it was amazing. It was everything I could have what I hoped for before, really.
What was like the highlight of your time at Carson-Newman?
Well, we won the championship, the conference championship, and that was pretty special because we weren't expected to that year, and that was kind of one of the rare times where, like, you know, you're on certain teams just click. There's just a thing that's there, and everyone kind of knows it, and you're kind of looking around. You're like, oh, we got something like really, like, you don't even say it. Everyone just kind of knows. So that year, that team, there was just like towards the end of the season, we just started going on this run that was just like everything fitted into place, and because the year before that we'd lost our 2 best players, they'd graduated, so everyone in the preseason rankings had put us down like 5th or 6th or whatever, and it just, something worked, and we just went on this run and won the championship, and it was like, yeah, no, that was one of the most special things that I've kind of in my whole career, really, and yeah, so that was definitely the highlight basketball wise, for sure.
Does that almost give you like a taste to like want to get more? Like once you get that first taste of some kind of championship, and all of a sudden, like, how does that mentality just then switch in your head, and you're like, right, need to win more now? Yeah,
there's like it's just like, it's so satisfying to go through that process, because a season is such a long grind for any season, professional or college. It's like, because it starts before you can even quite imagine playing games. It's like 3 months of just like grueling pre-season and getting into shape, and before you can even like picture what a game might look like, and then you start playing games, and to finish all that, and it's like all that was down to this point, and we completed it and won. It's just like it's just like just real like fulfilling kind of satisfaction, and then just wanting to kind of, yeah, you just want to do that again and again, really.
When I was speaking to Justin on the last podcast, he was saying that his college program didn't necessarily offer him too much help and assistance in terms of helping him find, you know, a career after basketball. Did you get much help or assistance from your program in terms of, like, did you want to play professional basketball, and when, at what point did you realize that you probably could play professional basketball? Because obviously you went on to sign your first pro contract in Israel.
Yeah, well, that was an agent. So I signed with you're not allowed to sign with an agent when you play in college, because you got to be amateur. So the day after my career ended, my like senior year ended there, I signed with an agent. That was again a recommendation from Andreas and Guy. Because,
so you were still in touch with like Andreas even after you left SGS?
Yeah, we talk. I was pretty bad at keeping in contact. I kind of was just like off in my own world for most of the time there. But they both messaged me, sort of checking in on me and stuff. So that relationship was always still there. And when I came back each summer, I would always come up and train over the summer with them. So yeah, Andreas recommended me this agent, and I think especially when it goes to like professional basketball, it becomes very, whenever you're dealing with someone who their primary objective is to make money, you always have to wonder if they've got your best interests at heart. And realistically, there's a lot of people that probably won't. That's just kind of like the way of the world. So there were plenty of agents or whatever, but the fact that Andreas had recommended this guy, I knew that Andreas and Guy did care about me, not for money, because they had nothing to gain, you know, and they showed to me that they kind of like cared about me and everything. So the fact that Andreas recommended this guy was like, that's all I kind of needed. So signed with him, and then he was looking at options in kind of like Bulgaria and a few places like this. The agent was Israeli, and then my brother one day was like, "Oh, you should mention to him you're Jewish," and I was like, "Well, that's kind of like that's irrelevant." And so then we were having a conversation, and then I was like, "Oh, yeah, I'm Jewish, by the way," and he was like, "What? Why? How did you not tell me this? This is," and he was like, "If you're Jewish, you can get an Israeli passport and you can go play in Israel, and it's the best possible option for you." So just I wasn't even going to mention it, and then I did, and then all of a sudden, like a few weeks later, I've got my Israeli citizenship and went off to play in Israel. So yeah.
And you went in to play. You played in the second tier. Was it Hapoel Beersheva?
Beersheva, yeah.
Yeah. So pronunciation, spot on.
Yeah, no, that was all right. That was all right.
What was that whole experience like? First time now being paid to play basketball. You just graduated from college. Talk us through it.
So it was, again, kind of just like the dream that you'd always had, like get flown over there, get picked up by the team at the airport, just like being like, wow, I feel like a pro here. This is I feel special. Driving you out, they got a big stadium in Beersheba, they set you up with a nice apartment. Yeah, it was kind of the dream, to be honest. On kind of like, really, really high level players to kind of learn from. Like Israel was just sunny all the time, beaches. It was pretty ideal in a lot of ways. Basketball wise, didn't get to play that much. Kind of like, and I got injured. Like I had like a 2-month injury. So it was kind of like up and down basketball wise. But yeah, in terms of the club was amazing. They were like really helpful, really, really professional. So yeah, it was great.
What was the standard of the level of play like in Israel compared to the BBL?
So I'd say on the whole, across the board, the level of athleticism is better in the BBL. The imports were, there's more money in that league, so the imports were like really, really high level. But the Israeli players were, it was kind of like it was a level of basketball IQ that I'd never experienced before. They'd be like, I mean, like the players that are like, you look at them and be like, this looks like a local league player, like a Weber player or something, and they would just make you look like a fool. Like they would just, I mean, it was just like, it was really, it's tough because when you're playing against athleticism, at least you can see what you're kind of like playing against, you know. But with these guys, it was like you just look at them and be like, oh, this will be fine, and then you turn your head and they're just gone and they score on you, and you look like you don't know what you're doing. So that was like the level of IQ there was just, I couldn't even understand it, to be honest. They were just looking the whole time. Anytime you kind of looked away or you gave them an inch, they were just gone. Or anytime you like leaned in, they would just get a foul. Or it was a baptism by fire kind of thing.
Yeah. Did you want to like, did you want to grow your career out in Israel, or did you always want to come back to the UK, or after that first season, what was your thought process?
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy the lifestyle of the kind of like overseas pro kind of thing. It was quite like you go to practice, come home. A lot of the players would have families and stuff, so there's only 2 or 3 players you really like, well, you're like your friends on the team, and you kind of just had a lot of time to yourself. And I kind of just, in terms of the life off the court, where I'm around like my family and friends, like that kind of, I wanted that. I kind of felt like I was kind of away from everything, and I wanted to kind of be, kind of building areas of my life outside the court. So it wasn't for me long term. It was definitely great as an experience when I was young, but I didn't want to be like 35 still in Israel and then coming back to England and having to like start my life again, you know? So it was always going to just be for a year or 2 for me, and then come back to England as soon as possible, really.
And then after your first year in Israel, Flyers fans do see you again in the BBL, but this time in a London City Royals uniform.
Yeah, yeah. Mad how that kind of happened.
How did that all like come about? That whole move to London City Royals? 'Cause I know they were a new team to the league at that point. How did they reach out to you?
So I'd quit basketball. I was done playing, and I was just working in a bar in like South London, and living with like friends or whatever, because that's just kind of like what happened then. And then I was on Hoopsfix, the website, the basketball website, and it was just like, oh, a new team's opening up in London, and I was like out of shape, like overweight, just kind of like, yeah. And so I was like, oh, could I play in the BBL again? Could I do that? So I emailed Junior, the coach, and was just like, yeah, like, can I try out? and he invited me down to like an open tryout or whatever. And because it was like the Royals opened up like like a 30-minute bus ride, which in London terms is like next door from where I was living. So basically, it was just from the universe. Like I was done playing, and then just all of a sudden a new BBL team opens up like next to my house, and that was kind of how that happened. Yeah, it was a weird one.
Yeah, I remember that all the hype on social media around London City Royals. I remember them saying like
changed British basketball and
force for change, wasn't it? And you don't make this caliber of player if your ambition is just to make the playoffs. Like we want to play in Europe and change the face of British basketball. Yeah. And then the project only ended up lasting 2 seasons.
Yeah, I mean the intention was good. The intention was there, and the people behind it, from the basketball standpoint, have a track record of doing really good stuff for basketball. It's a shame. It was a real shame because it was starting to build something really cool in Crystal Palace. There was a lot of again, a small community starting to build in the same way that we've got at the Flyers, but the only difference is the Flyers one's been building over 15 years, and they tried to build that one over a year. So it just didn't. The money just clearly didn't work out, and
yeah, it's tough. They from an outsider looking in, like they were splashing money on players. I mean, they brought in Brian Manning, Hamilton, but like the standard of play, they were bringing players back to the BBL that hadn't played in the BBL for a long time, and were obviously chasing careers overseas. You guys made you won the trophy that first year, and you made the playoff final as well. And what was that like for you to be part of that team that ended up going and winning the trophy?
Yeah, it was an amazing experience, to be honest. And actually, it was a really, really good group of guys. I think it kind of showed as well that like these kind of big British players, they want to be playing in England. Like most people want to be playing at home or working at home or whatever it is. Most people don't want to have to, in any career, go overseas to kind of like make their money. So if the BBL can get to a stage where it's offering these guys competitive contracts, then we can start having this like a lot of great British talent back in the country. So that was really cool. And really kind of positive to see that is, and it's a trend that's happening now. We got 2 GB players playing for us now. You got Andrew Lawrence, Justin Robinson, Matthew Brown and Manning, Ashley Hamilton. They're all still in the league. The experience itself of getting to the playoff final was and winning the trophy was great, and I think it was cool because all those guys had grown up together. So it was like, that was kind of part of the vision behind the team. It was all these guys who grew up, most of them were from London. It was like 9 out of the team were from London or whatever. So to see it it was a really close knit kind of team in a lot of ways. So yeah, it was amazing. Yeah, really cool.
Yeah, I remember watching they did a really good, I'll tell you what they did do really well was they did a really good documentary, London City Royals. Yeah. And I remember watching the episode where they came to Wise and they spoke to you before the game, and you was like, this is my first time back here, all feels really strange.
Yeah.
What was that experience like? Like, this is essentially your first game back at SGS in 5 years?
Yeah.
5-6 years?
Yeah, no more. Yeah, 6 or 7.
Yeah.
Because it was college, Israel, year working in a bar, then London. So yeah, mad. That game was weird as well because we ended up having 6 players because we had 8 players to start with. Two of them got season-ending injuries in the first quarter, which I'd never seen before. Kyle Carey, who plays for Cheshire.
I remember that. Yeah, I remember.
And our import, who's called Mac, he got a season-ending injury, both in the first quarter. So we had 6 players. Our kits weren't there in time. We didn't have kits. So like when we were ready to warm up, we didn't have any kit. And then someone had to drive them down, go pick up buy a new set of kit, drive it down. It was Nike, which we weren't allowed, so we had to cover the Nike with
I remember
from masking tape.
They kept falling off as well, and there were the cheeky pictures that I remember scrolling through the pictures after the game. I was like, are they wearing a Nike kit? What's going on here?
Yeah. And then obviously we won. Yeah, man, it was but again, just being back in that arena, again, going from seeing it with the little black bleachers.
Yeah.
To then just being in there, because it was a close game as well, and there were points where I remember Justin Gray hit a big 3, and you have that thing in Wise where it just kind of just erupts, there's that moment in kind of basketball games when the other team hits a big shot, it's horrible because they shoot and there's this silence while it's in the air, and then it drops and then it's just like boom. So Wise was just like, I was like, wow, when did this happen? Like it was nuts.
What was that experience like when you're playing there and just seeing how, like, is that almost like you're coming back home and you've seen the club transform from the last time you were there? I imagine that must have been. Did that kind of put in the back of your mind that you then wanted to go and play for Flyers again one day? Yeah,
well, from that game, I was like, I definitely want to come back and play here. That was that. Yeah, it was literally that game. I was like, saw the atmosphere there and saw where it had come from, and I was like, yeah, at some point, I want to try and come back to play here. And I think I told Andreas quite early on there that, like, even while I was playing for Royals, I was like, at some point, I want to come back and play whenever that works out. Whenever that's possible to happen. Yeah, I mean, how can you see? Like, I think it's the best. It's the best atmosphere in the BBL because it's so small. And it's so packed in, a lot with the bigger arenas, it can get quite kind of like spread out a bit, but because it's so like on top of you and the fans are just pretty wild. It's amazing. And also because you got that row right by the court, when you're playing, it really feels like it's like a sweatbox kind of thing. It's really cool.
You finished that year at Royals, and then you said you had that conversation with Andreas. I imagine those conversations developed quite quickly in the summer, because the following year, I remember you coming into Ashton Gate and we're doing your first interview, signing for the club.
Yeah, I mean, I was very much like, seeing what was going on at the Royals was kind of knowing what's going on a little bit behind the scenes with the instability of it and stuff. Very much like felt like being on a sinking ship by a point, and it was like I knew I wanted to come back to Bristol at a certain point. To be honest, I probably would have played for London for maybe another year or so because I was enjoying living in London. But I knew my next step was to try and come back for Bristol. And then just kind of seeing that, I was like, do you know what? I kind of need to jump before this ship sinks here as well. And then so I called Andreas and I was like, look, I know I told you that I want to come back at some point, and that's now basically. So it maybe sped up the process by like a year or so, but it was always gonna. Well, for me, I wanted it to happen inevitably. It was just whether that would work for the team and stuff like that.
Yeah, and then lots of those players for Royals also scattered around the league as well. Like, you see NBA now up in Cheshire, Hamilton down in Plymouth. You still chatting to these guys outside of the court?
Yeah, I'm still kind of on Instagram and kind of the odd kind of like reply to a story in DM, and then obviously whenever we play them, you get to catch up and have a chat. So I think everyone's still really close. A lot of those guys sort of grew up together anyway. And obviously in Plymouth, there's 3 of them on the same team now because Will Naver and LVC are there as well. So yeah, everyone's still in touch, and obviously everyone kind of has a few kind of like
throwback to the good old days.
Yeah, kind of what could have been kind of talks and stuff like that. But yeah, I think also because that year was so hectic, there was just so much going on off the court.
Yeah.
That kind of brought everyone a bit closer because everyone was just kind of like going through this kind of like sort of crazy situation together. So now you're kind of like out of the storm, when you see each other, you kind of look back and like, wow, that was something. So yeah, we survived kind of thing.
Yeah, and then that brings you full circle back with the Flyers. Second year back now with Flyers. You still enjoying it back here?
Yeah, man. Yeah, I love it. It's my whole family's here. My parents, my nieces and nephews, my brother and sister, both their families are here. My sister lives like next door to Ashton Gate here. So yeah, loving it. It's just like Bristol's my home, innit? So and then basketball wise, it's been up and down year. Obviously, everything's just crazy at the moment in the world. So it's just been, and there's been a lot of changes this year. We're just trying to like figure out kind of, trying to get to a point where we're playing our best as a team, really.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed we can get that push going towards the playoffs, and then once you're in the playoffs, anything can happen.
Definitely, and with this team, we've got all the pieces. Like we've got every single piece covered with this team. That once we're in the playoffs, we can definitely beat any team in the league. So once we're in the playoffs, we can can go as far as we want to go, really. So that's what we got to do. And also, I say, even in my college team, we had an awful first half of the season, the year we won the championship. But it's about putting it together towards the end. I told you we went on that run at the end of the season. It's about getting it together and obviously we had if you think about this season, we had Josh out for the first 6 weeks. Zach and Liam both had season-ending injuries. Ben and Teddy have come in late, and we're kind of just working it all out. Justin's just come in as well. So pieces-wise, we've got it all. We've shown spells where we look amazing. We just haven't had the consistency. We haven't been able to keep it up. But if we just got to put this together now towards the end of the season and go into the playoffs with some momentum, and anything can happen.
Just to kind of slowly wrap things up, have you had a chance to almost how many more years of playing do you think you're going to have in you?
It's a good question. I don't know. I'm 27, so hypothetically I could go for another till I'm 35, 36. So hypothetically I could have another 9 years left to play. But I'm really I don't even know what I'm doing next week sometimes. So I'm not going to plan 9 years in advance. So I'm just going to take it year by year. It's going to depend on on many factors. I'm enjoying playing right now. I'm enjoying being in Bristol, and I'm really excited for where the club's going. And I want to kind of be a part of that. So 9 years is the maximum, basically. anything up to there.
Yeah, you set a limit.
Yeah.
Have you thought about what you want to do after basketball? I know at the moment you're doing some writing with us, and you're doing writing on the side as well. And I know you and I have had conversations about the whole media side of things. Is that something that interests you?
Yeah. I've been freelance writing, copywriting, content writing at the moment, for sort of various businesses and stuff. That's definitely something interesting, and also with the work, community work, because I did some in London as well, just using kind of basketball as a kind of the more sort of charity side of things. So using basketball as a tool to kind of help young people and stuff like that. So I'm interested in that kind of thing. I'm just trying to figure it out now, because I know when I stopped the first time, I was very much at a stage where I was like, oh God, I've done nothing but basketball. What am I going to do in my life, kind of thing. So I want to make sure I'm just starting now, while I've got the time. So that by the time basketball does come to an end, I'm kind of ready to be set up. I don't want to get caught where I've got nothing lined up, and all of a sudden I've got to stop playing,
Yeah. I know you're doing a lot of the stuff with the foundation still, with the coaching and that. Is that something you can kind of see progressing, or are you kind of wanting to veer more away from coaching? I know players go on different routes, don't they? Some go into coaching, some go into the business world, some go into the media world. Are you still very much open on that whole front? I mean,
I definitely would like to be involved with, if there's a way I can be involved with the Flyers after I stop playing, in terms of building that kind of helping with the growth, whether that's behind the scenes in a business side of things, or it's working in the community. Yeah, I'd love to, because Flyers has been a huge part of my life. I've been with them since I was 10, 11. So if I can kind of help after I finish playing to continue that upward path, it'd be amazing. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely, 100%, Josh. I think you your whole story and your journey from playing through the junior levels up until the BBL team can only be an inspiration for young players that want to play basketball at the highest level in Bristol. I think that's a really good place to kind of wrap things up. Josh, thanks a lot for joining us on the podcast. We'll get you back on towards the end of the season, have a bit more fun, and thanks a lot for coming on, and we'll see you again soon.
All right, cheers, Joe. Thanks a lot.